Today we welcome Brian Hudson of Franciscan Health to finish our series on Learn About Lean with A3 problem solving. So welcome, Brian. Thank you for joining us. For those of you not familiar with Tippy Connect, we're a young professionals organization based out of Greater Lafayette. We're dedicated to the growth of those young professionals living and working here and in our surrounding counties, really in our entire state. So our programming is based around our 4 core values of engagement, development, opportunity, and service. So today's event highlights our development and opportunity values by pairing us with Wabash Valley Lean Network. So thank you for allowing us to join forces. To talk a little bit more about Wabash Valley Lean Network, Doug Ellenberg is here with us today. And for those of you not familiar with their organization, Doug will let you know a little bit more about it. So take it away, Doug.
I got dumped out. Okay, we look good?
You're good.
Okay, so welcome to our joint meeting with Tippy Connect Young Professionals and Wabash Valley Lean Network. If you don't know about Wabash Valley Lean Network, it's 125 companies, mostly in Indiana, but also Illinois, Ohio, and Kentucky. We meet on a regular basis to learn, discuss, and share with a focus on process improvement using lean tools and philosophy. Pre-COVID, we were meeting regularly in Lafayette, Indianapolis, Bloomington, and Valparaiso. So we'll get back to that soon. Plus, we'll also continue our live streaming of our events. So no matter where you are in the state or the country, you'll be able to participate in Wabash Valley Lean Network. Our website is wvln.org. So if you want to check that to look up on the meeting info, but if you're a member, we try to keep you informed also with email. So with the economy getting back to normal, there'll be increased pressure to do more with less. Isn't that the way it always is? To take better care of our customers, to grow our customer base, to improve our market share, to be more efficient. And many of the best companies in the world do this by using lean tools and philosophy to improve their process and their organization. So with that, consider becoming part of Wabash Valley Lean Network. We'd love to have you. So I'd like to introduce Brian Hudson. Brian and I have worked together and known each other for longer than either one of us want to admit. Brian has an extensive background in leadership, management, lean and process improvement in both manufacturing and healthcare. He's currently with Franciscan Health. Very knowledgeable, extensive experience. And with that, I'd like to welcome Mr. Brian Hudson to our event stage. Take it away, Brian.
All right, thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me. You see my screen okay? All right. Thank you, Doug and Rebecca, for having me. As Doug mentioned, I've known him for many years. Been a member of the Wabash Valley Lean Network for probably about 15 years in a couple of positions that I've been part of and have found great value in that. So I'm honored that Doug and the group would ask me to present on A3 thinking and problem solving, something that I'm passionate about, something that I'm on a personal journey and continuously trying to get better and better at. So I presented this probably about 1.5 years ago at the Lean Network meeting. And if any of you saw that, this will be different than that because I feel like I've grown and learned more in my journey since that time. So a little bit about me, just real briefly, I'm a Purdue guy. Spent about 15 years in manufacturing, and then about 16 years ago came to healthcare. So I'm coming to you from beautiful campus of Franciscan Lafayette East Hospital in Lafayette, and have been in healthcare, like I said, for about 16 years. I spent a short time with Purdue Healthcare Advisors in that time, and I mentioned that because it gave me the opportunity to work with about 25 different hospitals around Indiana, some of them part of big systems, we all know, some of them very independent, small hospitals. And so I'll reference some of that as we go through the presentation today. So I am a Franciscan Health employee, and I'm just speaking on my behalf based on my experience. So when Doug first approached me talking about the TIPConnect group and then opening it up to the larger Lean Network community, I thought, I really need to, with this group, needed targeted at introductory information. What is the beginning of this problem solving and this A3 stuff? I know that we all problem solve all day, every day, whether it's at home or at work or at the gas station or the grocery store or with our children. But what we're talking about is a little bit different as we're talking about our operations and the things that we do, the work that we have. And so the things I'm going to talk about are very pretty specific to that. So go to the next slide. During our discussion today, this kind of breaks down a little bit of how I see our time being. So if you came just for the A3 stuff, we'll get to that. We'll spend more time talking about problem solving because I think that is a very important precursor to the A3 work that we're going to be talking about. So having a good foundation of problem solving is very important. And then using the A3 helps us to tell the story. And I'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. When is problem solving needed? If we think about our work and we think about how we spend our time and the things that we put our energy towards, normally we don't spend our time on things that are running well, per se. We're kind of focused on the problems and the things that are getting in our way. So this is for you. This approach and this way of doing things is for you. If you work in an organization where there are several problems that you feel need to be addressed, just like we don't even know where to turn because there's so much, or they're just always coming at us. If you feel like you're solving the same problems over and over again, think about some of my manufacturing days, and we have this problem. It's like, didn't we take care of that? I thought we but here it is again. The quality of your product is suffering, or in some of those hospitals that I worked with, there was definitely a ready, fire, aim culture. Like we just shot the gun, we don't know where we're shooting, and then, oh, well, maybe we should have been over there. So maybe that resonates with a few of you if you're in that kind of a culture. I want to tell you a little story, and so I'll reference the story as I go more through the presentation. This is a real life story about a project I did with one of those many hospitals that I traveled through, and I'm going to tell it to you in a particular way, and there's a reason for my story. So I'm going to tell you about some work that I did with a hospital. This is many years ago, and this hospital wanted to work on biosimilar medications. Now, it's very possible that you have never heard of biosimilar medications, and I had not before I was approached by the director of pharmacy. And he described it as a very particular class of drugs, kind of similar to generic drugs, but just for that family of patients. So an example is on TV, you may see commercials about the Onpro medication that people that are receiving chemotherapy, they will get this Onpro, which is a thing that gets put on them, and it injects the medication the day after they get chemo so that it holds down the upset stomach and other feelings that they would have. So Onpro is the name brand of this, and there is a biosimilar called Udenica. And so that's just an example. So the pharmacy manager knew that we spent a whole lot of money on this family of medications, and there were all these biosimilars that were out there that we weren't utilizing at all. And so there was well over $5 or $6 million a year on this class of medications that were being utilized. And so he called me together and said, hey, would you mind leading a team, leading a project to work on this? And so as we got into it, we found out that, we spent about $5 or $6 million a year. There's a whole family of those medications, and we were not utilizing any of them. And so what he said as a goal is that he wanted to, in the first year, he wanted to save at least $100,000 in that first year utilizing biosimilar medications. And so we got the team together and we met in the conference room. We had a rapid improvement event for about 3 days. And in that event, we found a number of things that physicians were not familiar with biosimilar medications. Patients were not familiar with biosimilar medications. We didn't have any of them in stock to even offer them. We found that we didn't know what was in the pipeline and when things were going to be released. We just found out, well after they were released, that was now an option. So we got down to the root cause of many of those things, and then we developed an action plan where we were going to put together some material for the physicians. We were going to put material together for the patients that we would then kind of recycle each time we had a new biosimilar that we were coming out with. We got connected with a professional group that keeps track of all those biosimilars that are in the pipeline, so that we would even know months ahead that this was the projected date that this biosimilar was going to be released, so that we could be working on it and getting it out there. And so we piloted that with that first medication that I talked to you about. So we identified who those physicians were. We went and we met with them. We developed material for the patients and had, got some feedback from those patients. And then we got, like I said, connected with that professional group. And so we developed that process and we started running that process after we experimented with it. And lo and behold, it didn't take very long. I think it was 2 or 3 months before we had saved at least $50,000 by using those biosimilar medications. And by the time we got to the end of the year, I want to say we were close to $200,000 that we had saved doing that. And so we had not only done the first biosimilar, but we were close to implementing the second one and then the third one. So the goal was to set up a process. We didn't have a process for utilizing those biosimilar medications. So, Brian, that's an amazing story. Why did you tell us that story? And the reason I'm telling you that story is because it displays the way that our team went through the problem solving on this. And so I want you to think back to the story, and I'll reference it as I go through some of this future information that I'm going to cover here. So kind of switching back to the presentation. Why is problem solving important, and why am I talking about it first? There are a couple of things that I think that are important before we jump into the EA3 stuff. It's very important that we show, as usually a leader will come to us and say, Brian, I want you to work on this thing. I want you to work on this biosimilar medication thing. As a facilitator or somebody that's being asked to work on it, it's very important that we grasp the situation. We need to understand what's going on. And so many of the teams that I work with and so much of the work that I've been involved with, teams they're not doing that. They're just kind of, okay, let's go. Not taking the time to do that. And I find, we find in this work that there isn't a clear definition of the problem to be solved. In the 16 years I've been in healthcare, I probably asked that question 1,000 times. What is the problem that we're trying to solve here? And being very clear about this. People absolutely jump to solutions. Let's try this, and let's try this, and how about that? And let's do this, and let's do that. Surely that will take care of it. And so they just continue to throw it against the wall and see what sticks. Very often, not having a measurement to know where it is that we are and if we're improving at all, if we're heading in the right direction, and no consideration for making sure that we get to the root cause. So this is why problem solving is important and why we have to have a good, solid problem solving approach so that we can report back to those leaders that ask us to work on something or sign something to us, these are the things that we have to have leading up to or getting into the problem solving. So why is it important? Kind of the opposite side of that, we want to make sure that we have continuous improvement, have a better product, reduce frustration of our customers and our staff, improve our quality and cost, and that satisfaction. So if you have any of these issues, stay tuned, because this is the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about. I just left this note in here. I'd used this slide before. An idea of the definition of insanity. I know I hear that from a lot of people. Doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. So, you know, if we have that same problem again and we get frustrated and we're like, why did that happen again? Well, did anything fundamentally change that would cause us to expect to get a different result than we did? So I like to have that thought in there. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to kind of talk through this problem solving process. This is kind of pared down from kind of a bigger master problem solving, but again, this is kind of introductory that I wanted to share with you today, because it's very important that we have this and we go through it in this way before we even start really thinking about the A3. So I'm going to go through each of these steps, understanding the background, current situation, determine what the goal is, find the root cause, countermeasures, change plan, so on and so forth. So the first step in this is understanding the background. So in this, you know, as I alluded to earlier in the biosimilar example, how has the process performed in the past? We had no biosimilars that we were using at all. How did we know that we had have a problem? We didn't, you know, we weren't using that. We were spending more money than we needed to treat those patients. Where and when does the problem exist? What is the effect of the problem? That's extremely important when we're establishing that background. So even before we go out and we charge into this and we're starting to solve it, we need to take at least a little bit of time and make sure that we understand the history and the background of where we have been on this, so that our solution that we come up with is better. I think I sent these slides to Doug earlier today, and it's going to be posted on the website, so you'll have access to all of these that you can refer to again. So with having a good background of it, then is a matter of grasping what the current situation is. What is it that's going on right now or recently? And how can we measure and quantify this? I have a good friend, he may be on here, and I learned this statement from him back in my early improvement days. He would always ask us the question, what is wrong with what? And that helps us to clarify, you know, what it is that we are focusing on, what it is that we're trying to do. Clarify and be sure of what it is that we're working on, that the leader is asking us. It needs to be understood well enough that it could be described in a single sentence. We are not utilizing biosimilar medications, and we're spending more money on this than we should. Maybe it's something as simple as that. But just being very clear about that. Also with the current condition, encourage you, the term Gemba may be new to many of you. The idea is the Gemba is the place where the work happens. So if it's the sales floor, if it's the pharmacy, if it's the work cell where this is being done, if it's the conference room, go to the Gemba and watch the process and understand it. Don't sit in a conference room somewhere and just guess what you think is going on. So go to the Gemba to do some measurement about it. What are the cycle times? How long does it take? How often do we do this? Make some sort of a picture of the process or a process map. What are the steps in a process? The one on the right there is something I utilized years ago when we were doing some blood specimen work. We're having a little problem with that. So I created this process map. Just went and talked to the ambulance people, talked to the emergency room people, said, help me build this out so that we make sure that we understand the process. and then collect any attributes or other relevant information about them. So I kind of talked a minute ago about measurement. What is it that we can know to quantify how we're doing? So I mentioned earlier about the need to have some sort of a measurement to know where we are, know if we're getting better. Here, examples of measurements. I share these kind of thoughts with teams very often. Is there some sort of a time component to this? It needs to happen within 15 minutes or half an hour. Do we have data measurements on customer satisfaction? Something financially related, how much it costs, things like that, injuries, delays, things like that. So go understand, collect the data, understand what that baseline or current condition is. This next slide, I think, is extremely important, and I would have this be part of your homework assignment, is writing out a problem statement. And I think there are some key points in that. Like I said, we're not good in most of the teams I work with in having a clear, concise problem statement. So honestly, what I do is I start with a blank piece of paper and I have some of these things written out, and then I just answer these questions as I'm working with the team. How are our customers affected by this? How are the employees or any other stakeholders affected by it? How is the organization as a whole impacted by it? And is there some sort of a risk component to this situation that if we don't resolve this, we're likely to get sued or have some other big financial problem? Where does it exist? Some sort of high level measurement. How has it been performing over time? And then what is the time frame that we're talking about there? Is that year to date? Is it all of 2021 or 2020? Whatever the case may be. So I have a good friend that says, a good, well-written problem statement, and being able to state that with that, the problem is half solved. The problem is half solved if you have a good, concise problem statement. It really resonated when I heard him say that. And I think it's extremely important because it'll save you a lot of time going forward. The next thing is pretty straightforward. Determine what the goal is. So we know that we're down here and the boss came to me and said, we need to get to here. Is that 100%? Is it, we're at 20 and we need to get to 50? Whatever the case may be, getting to the goal helps us understand perhaps where others are performing and what's possible for us, gives us something to strive for. One of the things I would say in the hospital system we're really good at is sharing information. So I can look at other Franciscan hospitals and see, how are they performing on this thing? And if Indianapolis or Crown Point or somebody else is doing very well at that, then I can go, reach out to Crown Point and say, hey, I see you're doing very well at this. Help me know. But back to setting that goal, understanding what's realistic. Some people talk about stretch goals, whatever that may be, knowing what it is that you're trying to get to. And then stating that in a SMART goal type of format. I didn't put that on here, but should be important. The next thing, I could talk for the rest of the time about this. I'm very passionate about this, but analyzing to find the root cause. So many teams don't do that. The root cause, the short answer is, as you drill it back through the causal chain, what is the thing that is happening that is causing this process to break down? And so got some tools here that we utilize, and I've utilized with a lot of teams. There's the 5 why technique, very simple, very straightforward, can be a very good tool. The bottom one here is a fishbone diagram, usually for things that are a little bit more complex. Very good tools, but getting to the root cause. Some other tools here, brainstorming, FMEA, some of the other things, but like I say, this is so important. I could spend the rest of the time on this, but you need to be able to come out of this part in the problem solving process holding that in your hand and say, we are extremely confident that this is the root cause, because your leaders are going to be listening for that. In the past, when I worked at TRW downtown, our plant manager would say, figuratively, I want you to be so confident in it that you could stick the root cause in there, see the problem, and experience the problem, take it away, the problem doesn't happen again, put it back in there, the problem happens again, take it out, the problem doesn't happen. So being so confident in that as your root cause. To step it up, I only got an hour. Problem solving process, then developing the countermeasures. What are the things that your team is going to put in place to counteract those root causes, to cancel them out or to resolve them, fix them? You need to be very clear with your leadership. These are the things, or this is the thing we found to be the root cause. So as a result of that, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. So many times as I'm working with teams, they're doing all this stuff, but I have no way of connecting that to the root cause. I was telling a team that I would work with earlier today about, an example would be, we're getting a tent and we're going to have clowns and they're going to fold up these balloons, or we're going to get a cotton candy machine, and we're going to have chili and all this stuff. And I would say, that's great. You're going to do all that, but like, how is doing that? How is that going to address the root causes that you have? And so connecting that. So developing the future state process from that. So incorporating these countermeasures that you've tested, they're going to work. I told you a little bit about the biosimilars. We developed a completely new process for that, utilizing the tools and the methods that we had tested and were confident in as we built that new process. Creating a change plan. This kind of causes us to go into project management mode. So to implement this new process, what is it that we need to do? We need to do training, we need to develop standardized work, we need to get some stuff, whatever that is. Developing that action plan and then working to implement it, because that's one of the key steps in this. Your leaders are going to want to know, okay, so what are you doing about it? And when are you going to be done? And what is it that's holding you up from getting these action steps done yesterday, so that we don't continue to experience this problem? In a past life, we actually worked with the VA in Indianapolis, and they talked about these hierarchy of improvement actions. I just needed to insert this here. How strong are these actions that we put into place? Is it like, kicking a piece of dust, or are we really putting strong actions in place to keep these things from happening again? So redundancy checklists, architectural or physical changes, completely taking that step out of the process so that we don't even ever experience that problem again. You have to think about how strong those actions are. Follow up and evaluation. So we've done these things, and now we need to monitor it to make sure that we have gotten the desired result from it. We are heading in the right direction, or we are at that goal that we want to be. So monitoring it over time. We might have to circle back around. We might have to do some plan, do, study, act work or something like that to circle back around, but following that up. Then we'd like to do some reflection with the team. This is something that often gets skipped. We're just on to the next 35 problems that we need to work on. What is it that went well about this? What didn't go well? What did we learn? What can we take away from this problem solving that we can implement next time? I really like this slide. It's a little bit busy, but I've learned, being a part of a big system, that we ought to ask these questions. So where else, who else, how else could this problem exist? Who has the same systems? Who has the same process? So if we have this particular problem in the emergency room at Lafayette East in Lafayette, Crown Point and Michigan City and Hammond and Dyer and Munster and Olympia Fields all have the exact same systems. So we need to capture this problem that we solved, and we need to take it and share it with all those other places so that they don't have that same problem, and they can take our solution that we came up with, evaluate it, and plug it into place. So hugely important. Take the time to do that reflection and see, where else might benefit and might be experiencing the same problem that can take our information. The last step, also very often overlooked, is to recognize the team, thank them, congratulate them, whether it's buying some pizzas or, calling them out at a department meeting or something like that, letting people know that you appreciate their work. So at a very high level, problem solving process, I know I've said it, we've got to be very good at this problem solving process because our leaders need to listen for these things. They need to know that we understand the background, that we understand what's going on. We got to the root cause. We put things in place with countermeasures that are going to address that. We have a good plan to roll it out. So the reason that many of you are here is to learn about what was promoted was the idea of the A3. And I felt that it was very important to have that foundation because problem solving and the A3 are not the same thing. And there are going to be some points on here where people are going to have some different ideas than me. And I welcome the opportunity to connect with you and discuss this. So A3 may be a completely new term to you. Those that have been involved with the lean world for a while or improvement, maybe Six Sigma or other improvement methods may be familiar with it. But the idea of an A3 is a one-page summary of and report about where we are in resolving this issue that we've been given from the leader. One-page summary. And so my note here, what does A3 mean? I don't have a good one here. What A3 refers to is in the United States, we have this size piece of paper. I just printed it out off the printer, 8.5 by 11. In the US, we also have this size paper, which is 11 by 17. In metric countries, you call this size piece of paper or very similar to it. They call it an A4. They call this size piece of paper that we will call 11 by 17. They call it an A3. So that's as tricky and fancy as that gets. So you get one piece of paper to summarize all this problem solving that you have done and to be able to report it back. So that's where A3 comes from. And as the story goes, that was the biggest piece of paper that would fit into a fax machine back when they developed this. And so that's what the leader said is you get that size piece of paper. You don't get a notebook, you don't get a newspaper. And so as we get into this, you'll understand a little bit more what's important. Report about the problem solving process as you are working through it to tell the story, much like I told you the biosimilar medication story. That is what the A3 is meant to tell. I just have to, mention there are many different layouts with A3s, and many organizations use different layouts, different boxes, things like that. That's why I intentionally wanted to spend time talking about problem solving first. I know some use 4 boxes, PDSA, DMAIC, 9-box. I don't care. It doesn't matter if you have a 106 box A3, just as long as you have the problem solving method. I just wanted to note that there are organizations that use many layouts. And so I present this one to you just because it's kind of generally recognized. Lean Enterprise Institute and many of the other lean groups utilize this or something very similar. The titles might be slightly different, but this is what I want to talk to you further, because this is what I've had the most experience in the A3. So I'm going to go through each one of these boxes just a little bit, Again, these slides are going to be available, and you can read the content on each one of the slides. It tells a little bit more about what goes in here. But so I'm going to go through this, and then I'm going to connect problem solving in A3. And these are going to sound very similar when I go through these different sections, and they should. But again, the A3 is the summary of that stuff. So the first step is the background, being able to portray that to your leaders. And what I like to say to so many people as I'm working with them is, in this background, the note there, the question, why does this matter, or so what? You're going to be asking leaders to dedicate resources, time, maybe spend some money. It needs to kind of be like the headline in the newspaper that spells it out there, like put it in their face. We are experiencing this problem, this situation, which is causing us to waste money. We're making people mad. People are getting hurt that shouldn't, whatever the case may be. Being very clear about that here in this background section. So here I reference those key questions. I mentioned those earlier. What is the effect on the organization, on the employees? What is the measurement? Where does the measurement happen? So that information is further up. That's what that's referencing. But you need to be very concise in this. 2 or 3 sentences, being very clear. The next thing, the next section is showing the leaders what the current conditions are, showing the current performance. How have we been performing? How are we measuring it? Kind of answering that question, what is wrong with what? So visuals are good. Graphics, flowcharts, spaghetti diagram there on the right-hand side. Whatever it is that you can use to convey to the leaders, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I've been there, I've talked to the people, I've collected the data, I've watched the process. Give the confidence that you know what you're talking about for this current condition. The next item, talking about goals and targets, clarifying what is expected. Pretty straightforward. We are here and we're trying to get it here. You may build that into a SMART goal. By 12/31/21, we want to be at 100 x-rays per day. That's what we're trying to do, is increase the number of x-rays. And so just stating that in the goals and targets. I do have a note down here about just being cautious about 100% or 0. If you're nowhere close to those, as you get closer and closer, it becomes much, much harder to get to 100% or to get to 0. So just be careful and cautious. I understand you want to get there. If a leader is asking you to get there, get in touch with me and we'll talk about it. The next one, the cause analysis. So communicating that you know and understand the root cause. So maybe showing the 5 why, maybe showing the fishbone diagram, and communicating very clearly. Don't leave this section of the A3 unless you can state it very clearly. We do not have a process. The root cause is that we do not have a process to know the new biosimilar medications that are coming out and get them rolled out across the organization. That was the root cause. And so utilizing some of those techniques to do that. And so this is important because the next section is going to build on that. What is the plan that we're going to do? What are the steps? What does that new process look like? And the actions that we need to do to get to that new state. Maybe training, maybe buying stuff, hopefully not a lot. Maybe, putting some guardrails on something, whatever that may be. The next step then is that reflection. Like I mentioned, just any reflection that you have, telling the leaders, what went well, what didn't go well. Hey, I need to get on the horn and I need to talk to our other hospitals because I feel like they have the same potential for this to exist there at their sites. And we need to convey that to them. And then, like we talked about, team recognition there. So just at a very high level, the idea of the A3 and stepping through that. You know what? I just realized I missed a slide. Somehow in my haste to put this together, I missed the proposed countermeasures slide in this last section. But let me speak to it just real briefly. After you do the analysis, stating and laying that out, what are the countermeasures that you're going to put in place? How are we going to counteract these root causes that we found? We're going to put this in place. We're going to, go back and put some stuff in employee orientation. We're going to add this check in here. We're going to redesign the process so we completely take out this step that we seem to have a lot of trouble with, whatever that case may be, and then describing that new process. Then as we get into the plan, then that's the timeline of how we're going to roll this thing out. So this morning, as I was thinking about this presentation, this slide came to mind. And so I hope that it helps kind of capture my thinking and the relationship between these two things. So problem solving, like I said, is that whole, series of things that I've mentioned before: grasping the current situation, measuring, going to the Gemba, getting to the root cause, developing countermeasures, the plan. That is all the problem solving process. And that's all well and good. And that's what I'm trying to get better at each and every day in my professional life, in my home life, getting better at that problem solving. A3 is different than problem solving. A3 is telling the story of the problem solving that we went through. So A3 is a summary. It is high level. It is something that you would convey to your leaders, utilize with your leaders to tell the story of this problem solving that you have done. When I talked to that group this morning, an example I was talking about, problem solving related to the A3. Let's say I would tell you about the vacation I went on 2 years ago before all the COVID stuff. And my wife and I, we jumped on a plane and we went to this place. So we went to this town and we stayed at this really nice hotel, and we did all these things. We did these activities. And we went to this one really nice restaurant, and we did these things. We visited with these people and so on and so forth. So if I was telling you, like in the problem solving method, I would be giving you, a minute by minute account. We did this, and then I stepped with my right foot, and then I stepped with my left foot, and then I took a bite of, green beans, and then I had this dessert. Versus the A3, if I show you 10 pictures of that vacation, high level summary. We went to the Grand Canyon. We went to this really nice restaurant. Here's a picture of these friends that we visited with. Because, and I think this is important, you have to boil it down to the essence of this. And absolutely what happens, trust me when I say, when leaders come to you and they assign you these things, they want updates on it, because very often they have to update to their boss on what the status of this is. And literally, I've had this 100 times. The leader comes to me and says, "Hey, I got to meet with my boss in half an hour. I got three more minutes. I need for you to tell me where you're at with that project." They don't have time for all of the detail. They don't have time for every single thing that I did. They want high level, so that they have confidence that I know what I'm doing, that I'm solving the problem, I'm heading in the right direction. I need help with this or that, whatever the case may be. So this was the rest of my vision for this slide. The higher, bigger problem solving, got to be good at that. A3 is a summary of that. You can have problem solving without having an A3. you can't really have an A3 without having problem solving, or the A3 isn't going to be good because you're jumping over stuff, kind of what I mentioned before about organizations that are solving the same problems over and over again, having lots of different issues, people jumping to solutions. That's what you're going to have if you're trying to do an A3 without doing that problem solving with it. And so, my last point on that is A3 starts a little bit after that problem solving. You got to get your head wrapped around it. And then the skimming the cream off the top is going to be the information that lands as part of the A3. So just wanted to, a couple of things related to A3 thinking, making sure that you're very clear about what the scope is. What is it that this leader is asking me to do? We are going to work on this and this. We are not working on this, this, and this. Engaging the people that work in the Gemba. I can't stress that enough. Don't just be in a conference room, brainstorming what you think is happening. You have to be there at the Gemba, mapping the process, getting to the root cause. Not all at once. I have a slide coming up that's going to show that, but don't feel like, I told you the biosimilar medication project, and I told you because I was already done with it. When you're giving that update to that leader, you may only be able to be, in the first section or the second section or the third section. You are where you are. Don't feel like you have to fill out the whole thing at the very beginning because you're working through the problem. Being concise, and then I guess kind of close to a closing thought, the idea of deep thinking. Within our group here in Lafayette and Western Indiana, we've talked a lot about working with leaders and talking to them about deep thinking. Why is that important? The opposite of deep thinking is, if I go to the lake or I go to the river and I get a really good skipping stone and I throw it and it just skips across the top. That's what a lot of the problem solving I see is like. It'll take time to stop, think about it, understand, reflect, go to the Gemba. Deep thinking, very important in this process. So take time to do that. Your solution will be better because you did this. So years ago, I had some training material that kind of looked like this, or had a slide that was similar to this, and I adapted it. Don't think that because you do an A3, you're going to go, first section, then second section, or this problem solving, you're just going to go all the way through it. And so that's why this slide resonated with me. We're going to get somewhere, and then we're going to be like, oh, I don't feel like we really got to the root cause. We have to backtrack. Or that thing that we were measuring, I don't feel like that's the best measurement. We need to back up, and we need to, go back and look at that. Or I need to go spend some more time at the Gemba watching the process. Or the things that we implemented, we didn't quite get there. We need to go back and look at that and think about that. So, this, when I first saw the slide, it really resonated with me like that. We train it in that way, in that order, but in reality, it's more like this, having to circle back. So to find out more, these are some of the resources that I used or have read and studied over time. Anything you can find on Plan, Do, Study, Act. Dr. Deming, many years ago, well-known, Plan, Do, Track, Act. Art Smalley has some excellent books out there. Understanding A3 Thinking is one I've read through a couple of times. The 4 Types of Problems book is excellent. That's why, trying to be clear, we're just talking about a certain type of problem here as we talk about it in this way. Problem with an unknown solution, but 4 Types of Problem, excellent resource. I mentioned Lean Enterprise Institute, lots of really good stuff there. That article by Spear and Bowen, it's many years old. It may be 12 or 15 years old now, but it's just really good. John Shook's got a lot of good stuff. And then I mentioned that when we went to the VA in Indianapolis many years ago, probably 15 years ago now, that strength of actions, I had the one slide with the busting ball. We looked and we took that away from them. I want to thank the business transformation team, Tim Martin, Joe Swartz, Dave Hill, the team here in Lafayette, and many other people have been good at putting up with me as I'm kind of working through this. My contact information is here. Like I said, I'm very interested in reaching out, connecting with any of you. Like I say, I'm on a journey. I want to get better at this. If I can help you, or if you have some thoughts, you can help me. I would love to connect with you. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Brian, for all of this awesome information. I know that I've learned so much today, being familiar with Lean only in the past 6 months. And this was such an easy way to understand A3 problem solving. Thank you. We do have probably about 12 questions with about 10 minutes remaining. So I will throw some over your way if that's okay.
Sure.
Awesome. So our first one is, oftentimes I want to go to the Gemba to understand problems better. Coworkers sometimes do not think it's useful or don't understand the purpose and might prevent members from going to the Gemba. How do you best communicate the importance of this or convince others that we should do it?
I think you just have to, it's easier said than done, take them there and have them, watch and talk to the people that do the work. Those of us that have been involved with Lean for some time know about the idea of Ohno's circle, that Taiichi Ohno used to take people out to the Gemba, draw a circle on the floor, stand there. And the short version of the story, he would come back a couple times throughout the day and say, tell me what you see. And they, not thinking deeply about it enough. Come back again, would come back again. Finally, they understand the depth of what is happening there, understand the intricacies. So talking to the people, experiencing it, just a quick note, I've stood in on so many procedures here at the hospital. To actually see a surgery being done is completely different than sitting in a conference room talking about what happens during a surgery. So maybe you got to drag them by the hand, I don't know, but I just highly encourage that, to show the depth of understanding that you would have by going to the Gemba.
Absolutely, good answer. Next question is, do you use an electronic system or database for documenting the A3 process, or is it best done as a paper system?
Purists would say a paper system, a pencil and a paper. I know that many systems, you want to be able to share this learning across organizations. So a lot of people organizations use Teams or SharePoint or something like that. And in the past, I have looked in a SharePoint and seen that somebody else at another site did the exact same thing that I am working on. And so all I need to do is reach out to them, even though it was a year or two ago that they did it. But they, open to sharing it. So, the purists versus what's practical, using Excel or Word or something, and then putting it in a SharePoint or Teams or something like that, or just a plain directory would be fine.
Awesome. Okay. Dave Cotterman says, thank you, Brian, for a great presentation. He says, lots of valuable information and insight. In your experience, if you find that a problem has multiple root causes, how do you prioritize what cause to work on first?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you definitely have to separate out those root causes. And if there's some way, quantify the effect of each one of those root causes. There might be, a teeny tiny thing, that causes that undesired result, 3 times a year versus this other thing, we have it every single day. And so we need to prioritize that. So identifying those root causes and then somehow trying to attach some relative weight to it to help you be able to sort that out and go after the bigger things first.
Absolutely. The one you can argue for the most, right?
Yeah.
Great. Our next question says, like you said, there are many organizations that do things step by step and don't understand the point of the big picture and thinking, not just the Gemba, but all of the lean thinking. How do we communicate this stuff, and how do we deal with resistant leaders or coworkers?
Come to the Wabash Valley Lean Network. No, that's that's a recurring theme. I kind of jokingly say that, but as we plan upcoming meetings, that's always one of those things that we know that people are challenged with. The presentation just a few weeks ago by Joe Ely, leading from the middle, is a perfect example of that. So, I may see the vision, I see the value in it, but my leaders don't see the value in it, and the people that do the work don't see the value in it. So, in my experience, just a matter of starting small. Show somebody that there's value in this. Thinking of a project I did early when I started here at the Franciscan Hospital, I was just like getting my toe in the door, and that worked pretty good. And so I got my next toe in the door, and I could go to that leader now, and anything that I would want, should say absolutely, because I built that rapport. So it doesn't happen overnight. I guess it's part of that.
Absolutely. Building your network is important. And then just one last comment to round us out. Mark has said he had to be persistent to launch a 5S lean, and he had experienced pushback apprehension for 3 years. So to keep up the persistence. So I think that that also goes really well hand in hand with that question, and then the first question in our Q&A. So our last question that we'll take is, do you think there are any advantages or disadvantages to having a main root cause investigator that is familiar and works daily with the current practices in place? It's sometimes harder for people close to the current processes to step back and get to true root cause.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you need to have, at least somewhere in the team, you need to have that impartial person. You certainly want to have subject matter experts, people that are very familiar with the area, so that they can give some historical perspective or something, but you need to have that some impartial people or person in there to, balance it out. Because I'm just afraid that the answer is going to be, oh, we've had this problem so many times, and this is what we did, and this is how we fixed it last time, so let's just fix it that way again. When, okay, so you didn't fix it last time, we're experiencing it again. And, maybe it's a different root cause now, and you need to be open to there being a different root cause than the one we had, because we might have fixed it last time, but yet something else has happened and we're seeing it as the same undesired effect, but it's got a different root cause now. There may be something else that changed.
Absolutely. So just keeping distance then. But, well, that wraps up all of our questions. Thank you, Brian, so much for your time today and allowing To Be Connect to join forces with Wabash Valley Lean Network. Again, if you have any questions about either To Be Connect or Wabash Valley Lean Network, you can visit our websites. Ours is www.tobeconnect.com, and Wabash Valley Lean Network is wvln.com. .org. Sorry, wvln.org. If you have any questions for Brian, his email was on the screen, and a recording of this along with that information will be sent out via email. Thank you everyone for coming today, and have a happy Tuesday.